Norman Powell has already given Chicago Bulls fans and the Chicago Bulls roster one of the most important quotes that has gotten all offseason, and that's just by being real. He basically said that the team has potential to be really good, but they also have a potential to be really bad. And while some people may react to that in a negative way, I personally love it because of years of this organization trying to lie to us. It's good that we have a realistic view on that. But with that said, in that, it's also bully time because I want to address something that's been so loud in this Bulls community for so long, and that is that the people, namely content creators, that think that by being negative, it's being real, and thus any type and form of optimism is living in the clouds. We're going to talk about what it really means to be real and cover this team and why sometimes in sitting in this chair, you kind of owe it to the audience to have a more nuanced view. We're going to talk about it all plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Tre Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so Norman Powell just kept things real. And that's one thing I love about having veterans on your team, especially veterans that have been through all different levels. Keep in mind, Norman Powell's been an NBA champion. He's been on some bad teams. He's gotten traded. He's gotten moved. He's become the team's go-to scorer. He's basically seen everything that you could possibly see with this team. And that's why I think that Norman Powell was such a good acquisition for the Chicago Bulls, especially as you're looking to learn and develop players. Norman Powell was a second-round pick. They ended up becoming an all-star. Do you know how rare that is? How rare that is? A player that came on much later into his NBA career as a go-to scorer. That's even rarer, right? And so having that kind of thought process and having that experience in the NBA is something that you just can't overlook because as you're trying to build this young, scrappy team, as you have players that are looking to find their role, being able to go to Norman Powell and use him as a resource and say, hey, I'm struggling. Like, for example, let's say Dailyn Swain is struggling to get minutes, right? Dailyn Swain go to Norman Powell and say, listen, what would you do in my situation? Norman Powell can actually give a layered conversation and a layered response to that, and that's something that's so special in seeing that from Norman Powell. So I think that is great. Now let's get into the quote itself, right? Norman Powell was asked about the Chicago Bulls, and he said this: we have the potential to be really good, but we also have the potential to be really bad. Just a straightforward quote. And I think when you look at this, now he went on to say that Caleb Wilson is a stud. He loves what he saw from Caleb Wilson in Summer League and stuff like that, and that's all really good to see. That's going to stick out, and it's already stuck out. It's already become a talking point in Bulls, the Bulls social media sphere, whatever the hell you want to call it, right? And it is because it's a nuanced response. Because yeah, the Bulls do have the potential to be really good. The Bulls have the potential to be a bottom feeder team. Like that's there for this Bulls team. What Bryson Graham has done, and we'll get more into this in detail, is he's constructed a balanced team. Now, how good that balance is, like that's in skill set, but the caliber, right? That's always the thing that kind of separates. You can have similar skill sets with players, you have similar skill sets with teams, but the caliber of how you execute that, that's there. And I think one thing that you have to is that, one, we have to stop pretending that uncertainty doesn't exist with this team. It's not all positive, it's not all negative, but there is uncertainty. This is a young Bulls team. They have players assuming new responsibilities, and they have a new coaching staff that's putting development ahead of anything. And through doing that, it can get really difficult at times. One thing that I always point out about this team that I think may happen this season is that this may be a team that has to learn how to win, meaning that, hey, they may play 3 really good quarters, but fail to close out the games. And we see that a lot with young teams, right? And so because of that, and because of prioritizing development, it creates a wide range of outcomes for this team. And so I think that Norman Powell acknowledging that isn't pessimistic. It's reality. It's the reality of what could happen and what could come this season, right? I do think you compare that to the mentality of the previous organization, right? When you look at it and see it, is that like the last philosophy of this team, it felt too often like look at a cat and tell everybody that it's a lion. And that's really what it felt like sometimes, right? Everything was being sold as being closer than what we actually were. And AK fell in love with that too much, and it ended up costing his job because he can live in the reality of what it is, right? Powell is saying we might be good, we might be bad. Let's go out here and work. Let's go out here and find out where we're going to be. That is almost the exact opposite mentality of you having that being one of the veterans on your team. It's good. It's not an insult to the young core. He's not doing that because he showed excitement about Caleb Wilson and what he can bring. He highlighted Caleb Wilson's maturity, his hunger, his desire to be great in this league, and the potential to be really special in this league, right? So this isn't, hey, we're going to be bad because my teammates aren't good. It's being and saying, hey, we can have talent, but talent alone doesn't guarantee anything, right? And Powell is the type of player that can challenge the young players with a different approach, again, because of his unique situation and what he's been through in this league and how he's had to grow, right? And that's great. When you look at how the Norman Powell acquisition worked out, the Bulls just didn't get a scorer in acquiring Norman Powell. His shooting, his gravity, all that type of stuff, right? That's great, but you got somebody in it that you have a veteran who's going to publicly talk, call stuff out, and like I said, he's seen almost everything that you can get in this league. And that brings me to the topic that I talked about at the beginning of this. One thing that I'm starting to notice, right? And I think I've done a pretty good job, hold me accountable in the comments, of pointing out the fact that there are a lot of Bulls fans that are more positive about this team than what we've seen for a long time. A lot more positivity in this team because there's more excitement, again, about what this team could possibly be. Now, that I think that also comes with the acknowledgement from a lot of people that, hey, we're going to see how this goes. But there's far too often in this community, right, that people have confused now being real with being negative, meaning that, oh, just because I'm pointing out the things that are wrong, oh, I'm keeping it real. Everybody else who's not saying that these things are negative, and maybe I just have a different look in regards to it, and maybe that's why I've been blessed enough for my platform to get to where it is because it's not about being positive or negative. It's about being real. It's about being nuanced. And some of the people, and again, you don't have to be the biggest basketball head, the biggest IQ person as far as this game of basketball to be successful in being on this side of the camera. You don't have to be, right? But I think some people use that to forget that it's still in some shape, form, or fashion, nuance is still a big part of the game. There are so many content creators now that are in this space that think that, oh, because I'm being negative or because I'm just echoing what I've heard Bill Simmons say on his podcast, and Bill Simmons doesn't even know that the ins and outs of the Chicago Bulls. I'm echoing what somebody in the national media said. Therefore, I'm being honest. I'm being real, and I'm giving the thing that Bulls fans don't want to hear. And it starts becoming about it's fake, and it's fake because your whole view and your whole processing on it is just rooted in just being negative because you think that, oh, I'm giving it to the optimist people. And it's usually a lazy response, right? It's lazy and it comes down to it. And one thing that I always say with this, and some fans will be like, but hey, X guy is always right. Let me tell you this right now. It's easy to be right when all you do is say what can't be done. Like, for example, I can say right now, AJ DeBonsa may never win an NBA title. That has a higher chance of being correct than it does being negative. And it's super lazy as far as if you're here trying to analyze something, it's a lazy mindset to have and then try to tote your own horn and saying, I'm right about something because, yeah, that's right. Most players don't win NBA titles. Or if I say, oh, yeah, Cam Boozer's never going to be MVP with the skill set that he has, like that type of thing. It's gotten to the place where even for like the Nick Claxton trade, right? Like let's make it about the Chicago Bulls. People will look at the Nick Claxton trade and they're like, oh, he's on the decline. This is a bad trade because he's on the decline. He's not going to go anywhere. It's bad. The Bulls traded for a bad asset because he's on the decline. But yet they have not spent the time to go in and look at how the Brooklyn Nets changed their defensive system and how that affected the way that Nick Claxton was away from the rim, and it pulled him out on the perimeter more where he wasn't doing the things that he was the best at. Or they ignore the fact that, oh, yeah, offensively he's taking some steps back. He still averaged almost double figures. But, what's this 3.7 assist about? Like, how are they using him in that? How can that? It's not about being negative or positive. It's about saying, hey, this is where this can go wrong. This is where the slide happens. This is the reality of what happened. But hey, what could possibly change this and go a different direction? There is no more nuance in a lot of people. And, it comes down, it's a certain segment of content creators, right? You guys know I'm not always in eye to eye with Matt Peck, but Peck is not somebody who is bad at this job. And I'd say that every single day. He's not like, again, I've listened to Matt Peck for almost a decade plus, if that's not the thing. So it is what it is. But it's the people, a lot of the just overall negative stuff, it just comes from people who are just lazy. Like Justin, just lazy. in being a content creator. Like, again, me and him have seen eye to eye. We've had disagreements, but overall, it's like when you go and look at somebody who's had to say something and they said it like adamantly and then gone out and apologized, or how quickly it swings back and forth. Like, I could tell you 3 times last season where Justin started off negative on Josh Giddey, then said, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong. It's the moment that a good stat, then, oh, no, I was right. It's the swinging back and forth because there's no actual nuance or analyzation being done. It's all reactive. There's a difference in this game between being a content creator and a content commentator. And that's the thing that a lot of people separate on, right? And you could be successful doing both. I want to be clear here. You can be very successful doing both. But if you want to content create, it means that you have to look at things at a more nuanced and layered level, which means look at the bad, look at the good, look at the reality that is probably going to be somewhere in the middle, but how do you get there? How are the ways that you can improve? How are the ways that it can go wrong? Just flat out saying, if you listen to anybody that's just flat out saying, oh yeah, Nick Claxton, he's been bad for the last 2 years. I don't know why Bulls fans are excited about it because he's been on the decline. You traded for a player that's on the decline, and that's all their analysis is. Usually they're lazy content creators. And that's what I'm going to say in regards to that. I don't care how people feel about it. You guys know I've been really quiet in regards to it. And so far, and a lot this summer, I focused on just creating the content, talking about this team, and the comments that you guys have given in regards to being able to talk about it at a more nuanced level has given me the battery in my back to focus on that. But it's just this thing that I see in this community. And again, this is all rooted in the fact that I love this community. I love being able to sit here and talk about my favorite teams for a living. I love being able to interact with you guys. I love all of that because I put in the work and I love building the relationships in this. There's nothing, somebody left a comment yesterday that almost brought tears to my eyes. And that's not hyperbole. I mean that. It almost brought tears to my eyes. They said, Haize, the way you explain the game, the way you break things down, your excitement over it, it kind of reminds me of Stacey King. That, for those that don't know, the painting that's right here on this wall is going to be replaced with a picture of the Stacey King mural. I'm working on getting it. I got to get the print. I'm going to take a high-res picture of it. I'm going to put it on there. There's no, like, that almost brought me to tears because of how loved he is in the community. I'm not that loved, and I'd be crazy to think I'm ever on that level. I'm not. I'm just me. I'm a guy that loves my teams. I'm a guy that loves my franchise, and I'm just here talking about it. That's all I'm here trying to do, right? And at the same time, though, in this is that I wish that people had more, to me, and this is my personal opinion, not everybody has to have this. It's disrespectful to the community that you're supposed to be serving, being in this chair. When you're in this, you're supposed to be reflective of Bulls fans to me. And this is the way that I treat content creation. And maybe that's what makes me a little bit different and a little bit crazy, is that being in this chair, to me, the job that I have is to be a reflection of the Bulls community. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always going to be, oh, kumbaya. Now, some shit is stupid, and I'm going to call out some stupid shit. Because, again, part of being real in this community means also being real with some ideas are stupid. And some of mine end up being stupid. So I'm not separating myself from you guys, right? But at the same time, when people listen to you, what do you want them to come away with? I want them to come away. I don't want them to come away with, oh, I got to be positive or negative. I want them to come away with listening to an episode of Chicago Bulls Central and feeling like I have a 360 view on the things that could go right, things that could go wrong, and you can make your own determination on how you feel about it. You should make your own determination on how you feel about it. You should never walk away from a Chicago Bulls Central episode and feel like you got to feel the way that I feel, right? Now, I love when people push back and say, hey, Haize, I hear what you're saying about Nick Claxton, and I do see the ways that it can go positive, but how concerned are you about this? This is what's worrying me, and I don't know if he's going to be able to overcome that. I can say, well, you could be right, but here's the signs that it could, like, that's an actual conversation. The people who want to sit around and hold each other's hands and kumbaya and negativity, let them do that. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But I'm sorry, that doesn't make it more real just because you're sitting and being negative and you feel like you're reacting and responding to people who have some form of positivity. For example, the people who sit there and react like, oh my God, oh, you mean Bryson Graham could go after young players with experience like AK? Oh my God. It's like, are you stupid? Do you not realize that AK, not every thought that AK had was bad. It was the fact that he didn't recognize talent and couldn't execute the plan. If you look at the style of players that AK liked, it's basically slap. But the difference is that Bryson Graham has a better eye for talent and hopefully a better coach to develop as well. Again, that goes to that nuance thing that a lot of people miss in this game, but it is what it is. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I said my piece. You guys can let me know how you feel about it, and it is what it is. But I want to get into this article from Pimpin' Ain't Easy, right? Pimpin' Ain't Easy had an article in which they talked about how players could be traded to help Caleb Wilson with assets. And this gets into another bad thought process that I have in regard to this one. Now, you guys know I cover the trade rumors. We cover all of them because I feel like you have to. Again, I want you to walk away knowing everything that's talked about in this Bulls community, right? But the players that they mentioned being traded in this were Norman Powell, Nick Claxton, Tre Jones, Jalen Smith, and Isaac Okoro, right? Now, I get it. All those players are veterans. They're older. But the thing that I have, and I think that a lot of people falling into this trap with, is that thinking that you need to move your veterans to then stack assets, right? Not even go after players, stack assets. And then I think what people miss is that sometimes you're hoping that one of those assets could turn into a player as good as the one that you just traded, which then to me puts you in a situation where it's just bad asset management when you just focus on assets, right? It's not about being against trades. Bryson Graham should absolutely be listening out for any type of trade that helps this Bulls move forward along their path, along where they want to go, and all that type of stuff. If someone was willing to overpay because they're desperate for a bench scorer in Jalen Smith, or they're desperate for a point guard in Tre Jones, and they're willing to overpay, great. But that's fundamentally different than saying veteran player plus rebuilding team equals veteran must be traded. Stop that. Again, that's a lazy analysis that a lot of people have because we live in a world where it's assets. On top of the fact that I think people are missing the fact that you didn't see a lot of players move, even expiring deals, to where you got any meaningful assets back. We live in a second-round pick world. That's just the reality of it right now. Now, that could change. It could change by the trade deadline. Maybe a team that feels like they're a contender and one player away is willing to give up a first-round pick that's going to be at the end of the first round for a player that's on a $9 million contract like a Jalen Smith. And at that point, maybe you take that bite of the apple if you feel like you can find the talent that actually is going to be better for you long run. Or in the case of Jalen Smith as well, maybe you have Leonard Miller that shows, who's again more of a 4 and a 5 than a 3 and a 4, that he shows, and it makes you feel confident. Hey, we can move on from Jalen because Leonard Miller has showed us he's ready to replace that. And then you worry about the asset, right? But here's the thing. Surrounding your young stud and Caleb Wilson with assets doesn't actually help them develop. Surrounding them with players that actually help support their development is going to do a lot more than getting 4 second-round picks where one of them may end up being an actual NBA player, right? And I think when you look at it, we all know the reasons. Norman Powell helps because there's high-level perimeter scoring. Defenses can't overload towards Caleb Wilson or Miles Buzelis for that much. He provides some meaningful secondary scoring without needing to dominate the ball, and he doesn't force Caleb Wilson to become an offensive savior immediately. Nick Claxton, he helps on the defensive side of the ball. He helps create that funnel that teams like to get into where your center can help. If people get beaten pick and roll, you funnel them into the center. The center can at least slow them down and not have them have an open shot to where the offense kind of has to reset, and it gives your defense a chance to recalibrate after getting on a pick and roll, but it allows you to play more aggressively out on the perimeter and you're switching defense. That's what Nick Claxton brings. Tre Jones, the way that he can get players involved, the way that he ups the ceiling of players by his ability to facilitate without getting turnovers, and he will take on more of a scoring load at times, even though he kind of shies away from some three-point shooting sometimes. And then Jalen Smith, another big who can stretch the floor, who's better at the 4 than the 5 for the Bulls. His 37% three-point shooting can definitely help provide some spacing for a team that misses it. And then Isaac Okoro, again, Isaac Okoro may be the one guy on the list that I agree with. It may be better to trade him and try to gain something back than him, especially if Tiago Splitter doesn't view him as highly. I think when it comes down to it is that you don't build around Caleb Wilson by getting rid of every player who's already good at something. You just don't do that. And then you're hoping that, this pick, you know what? This second-round pick could even become Tre Jones, right? That's what happens sometimes. You get so caught up in what a pick could become that you lose the reality of what do you have here already in an asset that's young on a cheap contract and stuff like that. And that's the reality of it, right? Now, I will say this. There are flip sides to this. Like I said, if a contender is willing to overpay, if a player clearly shows that they're not part of the future, if one of the expiring contract players you feel like is not going to re-sign here, you do those things, right? Contract flexibility becomes important, and that's something that you look at as well. This isn't about that trading veteran players is wrong or trading veteran players is bad. It just comes down to if you're focused just on saying, let's just stack assets. You're not necessarily putting your young players in the best position if you're focused more on assets than actually building a team. Build the team first, and then listen to offers, listen to deals. Again, nuance. The theme of today's episode is nuance. A lot of people miss the nuance of it, right? And that leads me to the last topic for today. The 2026-27 Bulls season is about answers. It's about finding answers to the question, right? It's about evaluation of this team. That's where we are right now. You've built a roster that makes more basketball sense than what it did before. Really good, right? You have a coach now that is better at development. Again, really good to evaluate. So I think when you look at it, you have two different checkpoints in this season for the Bulls. You have the trade deadline checkpoint. What have you seen up until that point of players that you feel like are really part of your future? Who do you think isn't part of your future? Are you willing to move off those players? How you've evaluated their value? How have you evaluated how this team is playing? All that type of stuff. It does become a checkpoint. You could find then, and I'm just using him by example because of Leonard Miller, you could find that Jalen Smith is expendable by that point because Leonard Miller has stepped up in such a way, and that Caleb Wilson and Miles Buzelis, you see that those guys are going to be 28, 30-minute guys, and so there's only going to be enough minutes at another forward spot for one of those guys. Then you have that, right? Who's responded to Tiago Splitter? Who's somebody that Tiago Splitter has looked at and said, this guy's not worth putting it. Like, is Rob Dillingham not even worth the development at that point in time, right? Who has become redundant? That's another question. The offseason then becomes another one. Here are her 5 starters. Now, this is what we did last season. Who do we need to move? What do we need to add? How realistic is it for us to make that next step as a team? What is our draft position, right? Who's in that draft? Because that could, again, make somebody else expendable. That's what comes down to it. The most important distinction in all of this is evaluation season doesn't equal a tanking season. You're going to try to win. You're going to play within structure. You're going to force pressure. You're going to try to win as many games as possible. And that's the reality of where you are right now. You cannot figure out who you are if you're not trying to at least play winning basketball. Doesn't mean that you're going to win, but if you're not at least trying to play winning basketball, you're not really going to figure out where you are as a team. You're going to be a spinning wheel that just continually goes through the same cycle every couple of years. You're trading players, developing them, whatever it is. You have to decide that. You have to play within win. Who's fighting for rotation spots? Again, I love creating a battle at rotation spots because that's going to tell you who's going to want it, right? Who's willing to fight for it. And if they're willing to fight for it in training camp, then you have a pretty good idea that they're going to be willing to fight for it going forward in other places as well. That's what it comes down to for this team, at least for me, right? Again, hopefully this episode provided you guys value. I want to hear how you guys feel about it down below. You guys can always sound off down below in the comment section, man, on all of these topics. I want to hear how you feel about it, from everything from me to the Chicago Bulls, to Norman Powell's comments. Make sure you guys sound off in that comment section down below. Make sure you guys like the video. If you're on the YouTube side, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. Like I said yesterday, if you're a podcast listener, go and hit that subscribe button on the YouTube. You got a YouTube page. It helps the podcast grow. If you're a YouTube watcher, go and leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Let us know how you feel about the show since YouTube doesn't have an ability to leave reviews. That way you can help everything kind of balance out. Other than that, make sure you guys follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.